Recently, I've been picking up a bunch of new lenses for my large format 4x5 kit, trying out some new focal lengths and just taking them out and testing them and see how they do. And today I want to take a look at the last of the most recent of my purchases, which is this Nikon 150mm Nikkor W f5.6 lens that I just bought. We're going to take this guy up the canyon just locally here and do some test shots with it. So if that sounds good to you, stick around. I hiked up one of our local canyons we got that are just kind of right next to the city. And we've got a really beautiful flower bloom going up here this year. I mean, I've never seen so many wildflowers in my life. It's absolutely gorgeous. Lots of yellows, even some whites, some reds, and a little bit of everything. So I picked out a composition with a Nikon 150 f5.6 lens that I just bought. It's a pretty normal lens, and I picked out a composition that just kind of looks down all of these flowers off into the opposite side of the canyon, so you can see the cliffs and the peaks, and includes a bunch of sky too. Unfortunately, I had a lot cooler clouds when I started setting up this composition, but they all blew away by the time I got set up. So it's a little more blank than I was going for, but this is meant to be kind of test shots anyway, so I'm not too tore up about it being less of an interesting sky than what I was hoping for. But the sky is pretty bright. It's broad daylight. I'm shooting directly in sunlight. And I'm shooting Provia 100 on this one. Kind of as an experiment too, because I haven't really shot it in direct daylight before, so I kind of want to see how it does. There's a little bit of haze in the sky, and it's kind of got some whites into it, and it's pretty bright. So because of how bright it is, I've actually put on a 2-stop medium edge graduated ND on the front of this. So I stopped the lens down close to my taking aperture so I could see where the transition line is a little easier. So I think I got that set pretty well. It was pretty easy to focus. I've got some flowers in the immediate foreground that I wanted sharp, plus the peaks in the distance. So I used just a touch of front tilt, not a whole lot. It didn't take much, but it focused really easy. I just leveled the camera and away we go. So my metered exposure on this one was f32 1/3, and I shot 1/8 of a second. One sheet of Provia 100. Hopefully I got the metering correct, because that's the only shot I'm going to take. I don't really see a reason to take doubles on this one. I can come up here anytime and take this photo. I mean, the flowers won't be like this anytime, but it's a test shot. I'm not too worried about trying to go for awesome portfolio images on this one, so just a single shot. And that's about it. The sun's about to drop below the peaks that are off to my right here. When it does, it'll put this whole area in shade, which is what I'm kind of counting on. And then I'm hoping to try to pick out a few more compositions, maybe some tighter shots with just all these beautiful flowers. Or maybe even a wider shot. Not sure yet. We'll see. So not too bad, I don't think. I was pretty happy with the exposure on this one. Composition's almost exactly the same as another one I shot with the 300mm lens in my previous video. But this one was actually taken a little further back. This one's a little further down the trail than this one is. But the whole reason why I bothered even setting up and taking this one, knowing it was pretty much the same, was because of these wildflowers. This was the whole kind of like attention gathering thing to me, the whole subject in the foreground. I thought this was great. And I think the exposure turned out really, really good on these. The whole thing's tack sharp from corner to corner. I was really happy with that. Of course, I would have probably preferred to have a little softer light on these, but with all these mountain peaks and stuff and the sun setting behind it, I don't know that it really would have gotten those conditions. This just would have gone in shade. But considering this was exposed with direct sunlight on it, I was actually pretty happy with the way it turned out. So all these evergreen trees in the corner here, I actually thought it turned out to be some really interesting light. It was really fun to look at. I was really happy with that. Of course, the biggest bummer on this one is that I had a lot more interesting clouds here when I was setting this composition up. I wish they would have stuck around. It just took me too long to get framed up and focused. So all of that blew off out of frame. And I still think it's a beautiful scene. It's just kind of a shame. I kind of knew that these shadows were going to go dark like this. Honestly, what that is probably the transition line for my ND filter, my graduated ND. But they were being backlit, and there's some shade being cast here because the sun's behind this. But that probably made it a little worse. I don't think it's too distracting on the film, but in post, I kind of
dodge this out a little bit so that it didn't seem quite so contrasty. But yeah, so as a test shot, I think it's a success. I wasn't really going for anything, mind-blowing here, but I just kind of wanted to shoot with the lens and see how it is and try it out and make sure everything works. And yeah, I think it went well.
So not too far up the trail, I came across another composition. This time I'm looking up at the peak that this trail is actually on. The sun's just gone down behind the peaks off to my left here. I'm actually shooting towards that, although I framed my composition to try to keep that hot spot where the sun's going down out of my composition. The sky's still pretty bright. And once again, I had really cool clouds when I set it up, but they blew away by the time I got ready to shoot. But I was able to wait it out a little longer, and another patch of clouds came over and gave me some more sky interest. It's all the same settings as the last exposure. F32 and a third, 1/8. Still probably a 100F. The only difference with this one is instead of a 2-stop medium edge graduated ND, I used a single stop, 1-stop. Now that the sun's down, it's not quite as bright in the sky, so otherwise pretty much all the same thing. A little bit of front tilt because I have some immediate foreground, and then I got the far focus for the distance. And that's about it. So that's 2 compositions down for the Nikon 150 f5.6.
So underexposed, obviously, probably by a full stop or even a little more. The sky, though, I got a lot more clouds than I seem to remember. I was pretty happy with the sky. This exposure's a little bright down here. Because that's where the sun was setting, was over here in this corner, although it's just a white cloud, so I'm okay with that being white. The foreground is just not good at all. So I think what had happened here was that when I first saw this and started setting up this composition, I had some really cool clouds that were like these all swoopy shapes and stuff. But of course, by the time I set up the camera and got focused, all of that had blown out of frame. So I had nothing but a blank sky. However, there was more clouds over here on the horizon that were kind of drifting towards. So I had camped on it, waiting for those to drift into my frame to give me more sky interest. However, while I was sitting there, the sun had dropped further behind the horizon, and I lost all my side lighting here. So unfortunately, I think I was paying too much attention to those clouds and not enough on the fact that the foreground lighting had changed and I needed to re-meter the scene. So of course, it turned out a lot darker. If I had metered this again, I think I would have noticed that the difference between the sky and the foreground was a lot more, and my 1-stop ND wasn't going to cut it. But of course, when I had side lighting here on all these flowers, it would have been brighter, so it probably would have been fine. Unfortunately, I missed this one, and it was a lesson to be learned there in paying attention to changing lighting conditions. Now, it's not all a complete loss. I mean, the foreground's pretty dark, but there is some detail in here. The shadows do have detail. It's just a little more muddy than I would prefer. But I was able to recover some of these details in post-processing. It's just never going to look quite as good as it would if it was the correct exposure. So, of course, I would love to just sit and show nothing but my big successes and my beautifully exposed negatives. But the reality is I've always put these videos up from the mindset that this is my journey into learning this format. So, of course, I'm going to have some failures in here. But my hope is that, maybe my hiccups and my learning opportunities here, maybe somebody else can take away something that'll help them. So anyway, those were my 2 test shots that I took using my Nikon Nikkor W 150mm f5.6 lens. Although I screwed up one of my shots, I definitely think the lens is very capable. It's certainly sharp, easy to focus with. I'm looking forward to taking it out and doing some better photography with it. But in the meantime, I just want to say thanks for watching. Hopefully, if you got something out of this video, or if it was at least a little entertaining, maybe you'll consider hitting that thumbs up button, because that really helps out small channels like mine. Maybe while you're down there, consider subscribing if you want to see more of my failures. Thanks again, as always, and I'll catch you in the next video.